let me humbly introduce Mark Coatney from Tumblr.
Thank you all. For those of you who don't know, I'm the one who spilled the coffee in the back, so when you slip on that, it's my fault. So I apologize for it. So I just want to do a quick run through for Tumblr. I know we're a little bit behind schedule, so I'll try to be fast and leave some time for questions and stuff like that. So basically what I just wanted to kind of run through real quickly is a little bit about how to kind of use Tumblr in kind of native fashion. And so I'll start with a little bit about me, who I am and why I'm here. So I'm a former journalist. I worked for Time Magazine and Newsweek. I came to Tumblr after kind of using Tumblr and other social tools for Newsweek 3 years ago when Tumblr was like 8 people. So now it has grown into this thing that has, I think, 95 million Tumblr blogs, 170 million users worldwide. You know, it's a big network. So the two things I kind of like to talk about is a little bit about common misperceptions about Tumblr and then some use cases about it. So first of all, just kind of common misperceptions about Tumblr. And like all misperceptions, there's a lot of truth in it, but it's not the whole thing. One of which is that Tumblr is a network of blogs. Tumblr is just a blogging platform, which it is, but there's more to it. And the second is that Tumblr is a network of cats. And you know, it is that too, but there's more to it than that. So basically, the essential thing to remember about using Tumblr as a book, and the thing that a lot of people who use Tumblr don't fully kind of use and get the most out of it, is to think of Tumblr again. I'm sorry. Is that better? That should work.
No. It's in the room. The control room.
Testing. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Okay. All right. All right. So I hope you guys didn't just ignore half that I just said, but it was really good. So basically, the way that a lot of people tend to think about Tumblr, if they think about it at all, is as a straightforward platform to put blogs on. And you know, that's not wrong, but that kind of, if you think of it only in that way, what you're missing out is on the distribution and the sharing network behind it. Which is to say, and I should back up here and say, like, are most of you kind of familiar with Tumblr? Have you used it, kind of played with it, things like that? So for those of you who don't know, Tumblr is much like Twitter in that, you know, it gives you the ability to kind of follow other Tumblr blogs, reblog them, and the same way you retweet the things. The big difference is that you don't have a character count, you don't have any sort of limits on audio, visual, anything like that. So it's kind of one way to think of it is a multimedia Twitter without any kind of limits on that stuff. Another way to think about it, though, is that because of that, what it means is what you want to do on every post is think about not only what's it going to look like on your page, your blog, but also what's it going to look like on someone else's blog. Because a big way that everything gets moved around Tumblr is this idea that I see something in my Tumblr dashboard, the place where I follow everything. And I see something that looks really cool and interesting to me, and it's so compelling and interesting to me that I want to put it on my own blog. So when people ask me, what's the primary thing that you should be thinking about when you're doing your Tumblr blog, I would say, the primary thing is what's going to motivate someone to say, I love this thing, I want it on my own thing, I want to associate it somehow with me, you know? And so this can be very powerful for any brand or marketer. If you produce something that's just so beautiful, so cool, and so interesting that someone wants to put it on their own space, then they'll do it, and they'll kind of spread that message to all their network of people. So a little bit about how, some use cases about how this works. One couple blog that I would highly recommend you all follow if you don't is NPR Fresh Air, which if you listen to the radio program is a radio program aimed at kind of probably middle-aged suburban NPR listeners. That's not necessarily the Tumblr audience, but they have a huge following on Tumblr because they're very good and very smart about using the network, or using the language of the network to spread their message. So what that means in this case is, what NPR Fresh Air's primary goal is really to get you to tune in, to drive tune-ins to the radio show. So, but rather than say tune in tomorrow for, in this case, a program about yoga, what they did was they reblogged another blog on Tumblr that was very popular called T-Rex Trying. And you guys know T-Rex Trying? Have you heard of this? So they have a book deal now, so there will be a book soon. But T-Rex Trying is this. It's cartoons of T-Rex trying to do things they can't do because his arms are too short. So this is in this case, T-Rex trying to do downward dog. Where that's smart is where APR pressure was very smart, and this is again something to think about, is that they saw that and they said, oh, well, we're doing a program tomorrow about yoga. So rather than just announce, oh, we're doing a program tomorrow about yoga, they reblogged that thing that was very popular on Tumblr, added their message of today tomorrow for our show about yoga, and then that in turn got reblogged again all over the network with their message along with it. So one primary way to think about how to kind of use Tumblr is to think about what are the things in the network that other people are interested in, and how can you kind of attach your message to them. And in this case, I'm sure just found this because it's a popular blog and they follow it and you see it in your dashboard. But ways to discover those popular things are, for instance, follow a very good diversity of people on your Tumblr blogs. One thing that a lot of places don't do, and a mistake that they do professionally, is that they don't follow a lot of other people. It doesn't mean you have to follow everybody back, but try to follow a lot of people and not just other people in your kind of area, but just individuals that you think are interesting, smart, and influential. For instance, the US government pretty much only allows their Tumblr blogs to follow other US government Tumblr blogs. So their version of what is cool and interesting on Tumblr is kind of what the government thinks is cool and interesting on Tumblr. So, which is good. If you haven't, by the way, the National Archives is a fantastic Tumblr. It's like, original documents, all this stuff, really great stuff. But they're not seeing, for instance, T-Rex trying in the dashboard because they're only following this stuff. So one thing to think about is when you're trying to find out what's cool and interesting on the community, whoa!
Oh, sorry.
Wow, no, that's great. A little bit far, yeah, because that's probably way too broad, right? In case you guys can't tell, I don't really have much of a background in say, rap or anything like that. I don't really use the microphone very well. Wow, that's so much better. Okay, so where was I? So one thing to remember is when you're trying to find out what's cool and interesting on the network is to be a participant in the network. So not only just like put your stuff out there, but look and see what other people are doing. There are two good ways to do that. One of which is to use Tumblr's tagging system and to explore Tumblr's tagging system. If you go to tumblr.com/explore, that's kind of our listing of the most popular tags on the network. And that's a good way of just getting a sense of what are other people finding cool and interesting on Tumblr. What you'll notice from there, obviously, right away, is that people find visual things, visually driven things, obviously, are kind of the primary currency of Tumblr. You will also find that a lot of animated GIFs are also kind of a primary currency on Tumblr, which makes sense. So tumblr.com/explore is our listing of all the kind of popular tags on the network. And they're listed in order of popularity, so like, sadly given my background, news is one of the lesser ones, and things like LOL is a big one, as you might expect. GIF is another one. GIF I wouldn't look at unless you are comfortable with what gives me problems with seizures or things like that. I would like just chill, because it's like a lot of like flashing things all at once, and it might be a little too much to handle. But it's fantastic, by the way. But it's a good. Those are good ways to explore, to see what people on the network are finding cool and interesting, and then potentially things that might resonate with what you're doing. Similarly, while you're publishing your own stuff into that network, if you tag them where appropriate, obviously don't tag something as LOL if it's not funny. I know that's subjective, but put things, tag where appropriate. But if you are doing something you think fits with those popular tags, obviously tag them there, get them in that stream, help them get recognition. That's one way to kind of just get yourself discovered on the network. The second way that's also very helpful, not tag driven, but and a better kind of more organic way to do it that just requires a little bit of spending time on your dashboard again, is to pay attention to the people who reblogged you. One thing I did early on in Tumblr is, at Newsweek, was I would kind of click back if someone followed me or someone like reblogged something I said, and you get all those notifications in real time as they come in. And it was very instructive to see like who's my audience, what are they doing, what are the kind of people. Because one thing that I find fascinating about Tumblr is that it's much more kind of a personal expression than say a Facebook page or a Twitter feed, which often among individuals tend to have like a lot of business uses. Tumblr blogs, because they tend to not be your real name even, are often just like things you find cool. And I think that's actually a better indicator of the person a lot of times than that they filled out a thing that said, I like this movie or I like this book or whatever. But it requires a little bit more observational stuff, but I think you can learn more about the people who are your customers, your followers, whatever it is, by just kind of following some of them back selectively and seeing what they are. One thing I would caution though is that, I think it's good to follow those people, where appropriate, but don't follow everyone. I made that mistake in Newsweek where I followed every single person that followed me back, and it was mostly great, except that I started following this one woman who was very nice and occasionally would post topless photos of herself. And it's just like you're trying to do the, show the dashboard to people, and they're like, oh, I see why you like Tumblr. So just like a caution about that. That said, that also brings me to another point, which is that if you're a jerk on Tumblr, people tend to unfollow you at a higher rate than if you're a jerk on Twitter. And so it's something to be aware of. And partly that's because of the nature of the Tumblr dashboard. If you're following someone on Tumblr and you're in that Tumblr dashboard, all you're seeing at any given moment is like a single post from that person because the kind of scrolls by. And so for that moment that post from that person you're following shows up on your screen, that's the only thing you see that commands your screen. And so if it's annoying, then they're gonna like not want to see that in their thing. So like if people are annoying me on Facebook or Twitter, on Facebook I stop paying attention to them, and then it kind of the algorithm sorts them out. And on Twitter it goes by so fast that I don't really notice it. But so on Tumblr it really behooves you to be, nice. Don't be a dick on Tumblr, and I think that helps a lot. Okay, so the next one, for those who don't know, Seatown in Williamsburg has had for 3 years a very good Tumblr. Which, on the one hand, you wouldn't expect a grocery store to have a good Tumblr. On the other hand, it is in Williamsburg, and so it's kind of ground zero for Tumblr users, so it averages out. So, for instance, obviously, this is just an example of how you can have fun with your grocery store. This was from the snowstorm a couple weeks ago. This was they posted, right? But totally nice. What they're really good at is not just like, today's special is ground chuck or whatever. Although they do that too, but it's just like let's have some fun with what's going on with the thing. At the same time, they also do servicey stuff. One thing that's great on Tumblr is every Tumblr has an Ask blog, so I don't know if you can read that. But what they're, that's I would be irritated if I shopped there too and I didn't know where this stuff was. So they were really good about like following up, making good use of that Ask box, that Ask interaction with readers in a way that breaks down the wall between store and customer. This is one of my favorite Tumblrs. If you guys didn't follow it this last campaign season, no matter like what kind of political persuasion you are, this far and away I thought was one of the best examples of political communication on the web. In part because they did two things that were very good. One was they didn't pretend to be Barack Obama. So like it was very clear that this was the campaign's Tumblr and not Obama. So like you're in your dashboard, there wasn't someone trying to speak as Obama. It was just this one woman named Laura Olin, who was a genius at just kind of having a good conversational, engaging tone. The second thing that she did really good was, again, kind of just participate in the community. So this is a little bit hard to kind of follow, but basically the sequence of this post is, it was kind of several reblogs back and forth. The sequence was basically VH1's Tumblr post, or no, another person that VH1's Tumblr followed posted this first thing, which is that I can't tell which Tumblr I like better, Barack Obama or VH1. VH1 responded with this GIF of Darren Criss and said, would Obama do this? And Obama then responded and said, yes, we would, and here's our version. And so like it just quickly became this nice call and response that kind of engaged people, brought them into this kind of intimate relationship with the people in the campaign, and just in a fun way that kind of wasn't all about politics, but made them just kind of feel like they had they knew someone in the campaign. So what I think is valuable there again is that like it's not always about just what you're selling, what you're talking about, but it can sometimes just be about this is something we're interested in, and we want to have a connection with you because we're interested in the same kind of things, and they're very good about that. Again, because their primary goal is really just to get people to like them, and this is how they did it. The first one, this is also another example, the best example I've seen of just a super servicey thing. I mean, this is Planned Parenthood. It's the first thing you see when you come to this page is ask us something, right? It's very tightly focused on customer service. Most of what they post is people ask them questions. I've learned far more than I ever wanted to know about women's reproductive health by following this. So it's a very useful tool, and so like to think again of remember that you're doing this Tumblr blog and it's sitting on top of this network of stuff, of people talking, or people who want to share what you're talking about. And if you make yourself available to them, they'll ask you questions. They'll provide you with the kind of content that you need to kind of engage with people. And so, I always encourage people to kind of be as open as possible on these networks, on Tumblr. Forget Tumblr, on Twitter, Facebook, and wherever, to be as open as possible to kind of respond to readers, to like be the clearinghouse for this stuff. I want to quickly pause because I have a few things, but just want to make sure, because I know we're running short on time. Does anybody have any questions right in the middle? Because I don't want to run out. So can I answer anything right now? Has everything made sense? And people who didn't hear the first half, is that all okay? Good. Okay. So plan parent. So the next thing is, how do you, the thing that the people always say is, how do you move on Tumblr from, just starting out to reaching this audience that you want to reach? Now, some of these, these tools I've talked about are part of that. The fundamental thing that I would say when you want to reach a Tumblr audience is, how are you going to be the conversational thread between what they're interested in and what you are? So, we've talked about following tags. We have talked about just paying attention to what people do on the network. What I think is kind of most important to remember is just Tumblr, unlike a lot of other networks, rewards spending time on it, which is a little hard to say, because I know a lot of people, want to hook your Tumblr up to other things, or want to automate the process and things like that. One thing I wouldn't say, although I know it works on Twitter and things like that, is using like if this then that kind of scripts on Tumblr or things like that, because what you'll typically find is Tumblr doesn't reward automation. Tumblr doesn't really reward RSS or just things that are just imports of stuff. What Tumblr really rewards is kind of constant conversation, constant conversational engagement. Where that's hard, obviously, is that takes time. It takes time and effort, and it doesn't mean that you can't do it. And there's certainly plenty of Tumblr blogs that have been very successful in being just kind of publish something out. But if you're going to do that, if you're going to not be conversational, the only way that I have seen people be successful with that is either to be Vogue, because Vogue doesn't talk back to anybody, but they have a ton of followers. And that's because they have beautiful pictures and they just put them out there, and also because you wouldn't think that Vogue would talk back to you, right? Like, that's the whole point, right? If Vogue talked back to you, you'd be like, oh, that can't be Vogue. So they actually have a ton of Tumblr followers, and what they do is just publish their stuff, and people consume it and reblog it, and the reason it works is because they're putting this beautiful content into the system that other people then want to share around. Another one that does that very well in a different way is this thing from ProPublic I call officials say the darndest things, where they take quotes from elected officials, put these little conversation starters out there in the mix, let people reblog them, but they don't interact with people in the same way. So if you have a certain kind of hook like that, if you have a certain kind of, like we've got beautiful images that we want to toss out, or we've got a particular niche text thing that we want to do, then you can do that. But overall, the ones that I see are much more commonly the ones that I see are successful are the ones that are conversation, the ones who are like Planned Parenthood who will talk back to you, or the Obama campaign where you can ask them questions. The Obama campaign got hundreds of asks and questions in their inbox every day, and they obviously couldn't answer them all, but the fact that they were able to be responsive to their readers, that kind of sealed the bomb a little bit better and got them a lot more attention. The other thing you can think about though is a lot of times when people start a Tumblr project, they think of it in terms of this has to last for the rest of my life, and so they spend a lot of time and effort, and I mean, I can't tell you, I spent about 6 months with GQ doing their Tumblr, and it's beautiful, but they spend a lot of time thinking about what it's going to be and what's the voice and everything. You can certainly do that, but you can also just do a Tumblr that runs for a week. One thing I think a lot of times people in any media or any business don't think about is that, the disposable, potential good use of this as a disposable kind of thing. For instance, well, I mean, the example that I remember from early on is at Newsweek, we were supposed to cover the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which was like a non-news event that, you know, what's that joke about Washington is Hollywood for ugly people? And so that was kind of what it was, and I was like, I don't know that I want all these pictures of ugly people in our feed. So I said that nicer, but you know. But so the solution to that, and this is a solution that I think is useful for anybody if you're thinking about building a Tumblr presence for a side project, is that we just, you know, you can create any number of secondary blogs underneath your main account. So we just created a secondary blog that allowed us to kind of cover the White House Correspondents' Dinner, but then also not have it be clogging everyone's dashboards if they didn't want to see it. So like, you know, if you have a particular event, you know, we could have done one for this conference. If you have a particular thing that is useful for a day or two that you want to just like quickly put out and let people use, and then maybe, you know, look at it for forever but not ever maintain again, a Tumblr blog is a really good way to kind of do that as a kind of like lightweight, disposable, instant blogging.
You said you've got 180 million users right now. What percentage of those are adolescents?
This is going to be a somewhat of a guess because we don't ask for that information like, say, Facebook does. You know, all we really ask for is that you're over 13 and that you are, you know, have a legal email address or something, you know, or an email address, not legally, but you know. The average age is roughly 24, but the average power user, I would guess, is probably 17. So in other words, like there's about 80 million posts made a day on Tumblr, right? And of those, I would guess a high percentage are made by, you know, like teenagers. In part because one way we know this is because we have a 250 post a day limit to fight spammers, basically, and we often get emails from angry teenagers saying it's noon and I've hit my 250 post limit. Can you reset my limits? Kind of stuff. So one thing that's was interesting, you may have seen a bit.ly analysis of Tumblr a few months ago that talked about the best times to post on Tumblr, link people. And what it showed is, like, unlike virtually any other web thing I've ever seen, the peak times are Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, evenings and weekends. And that's because obviously it has a high percentage of people who are teenagers who are on the platform. That doesn't mean necessarily that that's when you should post yourself, because if you're not trying to reach teenagers, it doesn't matter if you're posting, you know, Friday night. Tumblr still has a pretty diverse, large group that you can reach at noon Eastern and their conventional times. That's it. So sorry, I want to hit that, you know, get out the door before everybody's gone. Anything else before I go? Oh, sorry.
Do you see using Tumblr as your primary blogging platform as opposed to, say, hello?
They work.
Do you see using Tumblr as your primary blogging platform as effective as a blogger or?
I think it very much depends. I mean, you know, Blogger, WordPress all have their own good uses, I think. Where I think Tumblr is useful is it has a built-in distribution network behind it. You know, so like if you publish something on WordPress or Blogger or anything else, really, then you still need to go out and market it. And you know, you can still do that with your Tumblr thing as well, and Tumblr does well with SEO and all that stuff. So but it has the added benefit that people can follow you, find you, and it reduces the friction to finding your stuff. One thing that I've always found, you know, increasingly as more and more things are out there, I get more and more lazy. You know, I tend to not go to certain websites so much as I rely on Tumblr, Twitter, or Facebook to send things to me. So it's easier if you're in that stream already than if you have to like publish something on Blogger and then you have to like, you know, get it out into the stream. You know, so that's where I think the use.
So even if you're using it as for original content, not reblogging.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of people do use it just as a strict, you know, format, only original stuff, and don't use it conversationally. And a lot of them get good followers because they're putting good original stuff out there. It's the more common use case is reblogging because it's easier, you know what I mean? But a lot of people do that. Sorry.
Curious question, you might not be able to answer. Do you guys have a business model about earning revenue?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, like 2 years ago, the business model was finding people to give us money, but now we actually have an actual business staff and infrastructure in place, which is great. So basically, the main part of it is around advertising. If you look at the Tumblr dashboard, there's a thing on the Tumblr dashboard that's the kind of right-hand column that everybody sees on Tumblr called Tumblr Radar. And that's typically always been our curated, post that we like on Tumblr. So it's like, editorially driven thing. So now what we allow you to do is buy into that spot. So if you're an so where I like that a lot is that if you're an advertiser and you want attention for anything you do on Tumblr, first of all, you have to have a Tumblr blog. So Adidas wants to be on Tumblr, or Adidas wants to reach the Tumblr audience. Rather than just having a banner ad on Tumblr, what they do is they create a Tumblr blog that then is highlighted in this radar spot so that everyone gets to see it and know it and follow it. What I think that's really good is that it gives the advertisers the same kind of tools as just anybody else. They use it in the same way as anybody else. So it makes it hopefully less intrusive to readers and hopefully something more that people want to see in front of them.
Do you guys foresee that being able to scale to the level of your current valuation?
I think so, yeah. I mean, in part because we just, we've only started doing it for a few months, and right now, and the response has been really good. And right now, it's a global product. So I think this month actually we're going to launch our geo targeting for the first time. But even when it was just something that you put in front of everybody in the world, I think we got a good response. So I think once we kind of have it. Where we hope it differentiates us is that how like Google advertising, Facebook advertising is very intent driven. It's like it's around the idea that you are looking for sneakers and they're going to put an ad in front of you because you're looking for sneakers, or that your friends are talking about sneakers and we're going to put an ad in front of you. So it's all based on these intent cues. Where I think Tumblr could be interesting is that it's more analogous to say print TV advertising that's really more around kind of creation of intent, you know what I mean? So it's like more that you don't even know that you want sneakers and then we're going to put these cool Adidas sneakers in front of you and then you're like, wow, those are cool. So it's more about kind of brand advertising than kind of search driven stuff. That's good? Okay. All right, thank you so much.
So if you guys have